Fredrick. I apologize if my voice is a little gruff. I'm just coming out of a cold. But I wish everyone a good evening. And before we get started, I would just like to start off with a land acknowledgement. As we gather in this virtual space, we recognize that we are connected with one another through the winds that bow air into our lungs and through the waters that move deep into the earth and up into the sky. We acknowledge that the ground beneath our feet is historically the home of Indigenous peoples, many of whom have been forced to leave for other lands. Peoples who were first to live, celebrate, lament, and sing upon the land where we now sit. May we also remember that Indigenous peoples are not a people of the past, but are here with us now. If there are Indigenous people on this call, you're invited to share your tribe so that we may recognize you. Thank you. I will go ahead and get started. I'm just going to share my screen. Mr. Karki, if there's any issues, please let me know.
Thank you very much. Yes, by all means. We can see your screen, so please go ahead.
Thank you. So the process and requirements is what we're going to go through today. And I'm going to go through a few pathways through which we can attain Canadian permanent residency. So a little bit about the agenda today. I'll talk a little bit about myself, the firm that I work with in London, Ontario, VS Law. We will go through the rights of a temporary resident, permanent resident, and Canadian citizen, assess the pathways to permanent residency, and of course, discuss the impact of COVID-19 and its variants on Canadian immigration. One of my favorite quotes that relates to Canadian immigration is, "Canada is freedom and freedom is nationality." Of course, we as Canadians are still on that journey towards freedom. It is still something that we are progressing upon, but I think Canada is making steps in that direction. Contrasting rights of temporary residents, permanent residents, and Canadian citizens. As a temporary resident, you are here in Canada studying, working, contributing to the Canadian economy. However, you do not have rights that are given to permanent residents, especially Canadian citizens. What do I mean by that? By rights, what is a right? A right is the ability to envision the life for yourself, for your family that you want to envision, and be able to go about doing that in a way that no one is able to stop you from achieving that goal. Canada is one of those places that gives you that freedom. And to be able to do that, to be able to access those rights, you have to be a Canadian citizen, and permanent residency is a pathway. I am a child of an immigrant myself. Over 15 years ago now, my parents immigrated to Canada. It is why I am so deeply passionate about this subject, and I'm willing to do what it takes to help the immigrants in this country realize their goals to permanent residency and ultimately citizenship. So quickly, what does it mean to be a permanent resident? A permanent resident is given the right to live in Canada permanently. However, there are some permanent residency requirements that you are meant to abide by. Also, as a permanent resident, you are not able to run for political office. You are also not able to hold some jobs that require high-level security. As a Canadian citizen, however, you are able to do such things. You can also lose your permanent residency for certain reasons. However, you cannot lose your Canadian citizenship. So these are some of the differences between temporary residents, permanent residents, and a Canadian citizen. So let's explore some of the pathways to permanent residency. The PR pathway that is the fastest and that is the most popular and widely spoken about is express entry. As you all might be aware, express entry is a 6-month process, or could take a little bit longer, but anywhere from 6 months onwards. There are 3 programs that come under the express entry. So there's the Federal Skilled Worker Program, the Federal Skilled Trades Program, and the Canadian Experience class. On your right-hand side, you will see some icons. And the reason I've included that is to give you a visual on what are some of the criteria that is evaluated when assessing your application to be put into the express entry pool. Not everybody makes it into the express entry pool. You have to have a 67-point minimum. And those points are gathered through 6 factors: age, education, work experience. If you have a job offer, you get additional points. If you have a spouse or someone immigrating with you, you also get additional points. And once you meet the 67 minimum threshold, you're put into a pool, an express entry pool. And the highest CRS scores, some of you might be familiar with this, the points are out of 1,200. The highest CRS scores are invited to apply. Not everyone qualifies for express entry. It is something that targets people with education, minimum of a master's degree nowadays. It requires high English language proficiency. So it is not necessarily a PR pathway that is suitable for everyone. There are other pathways that we will explore, but before I get into that, I wanted to talk about 3 PR pathways under express entry. So the first one being Canadian Experience class. Canadian Experience class is particularly for people who are in Canada already. So if you're a foreign worker, if you're an intra-company transfer, if you are a student on a postgraduate work permit who has completed work experience in Canada, you can use this skilled work experience that you've got as a factor for PR consideration. There are specific requirements. For example, the National Occupation Classification, or NOC, has to be in 0, A, or B. That is the cadre of job that you have to have, the level of job, to be able to qualify under the Canadian Experience class. Again, you also have to show English proficiency, just like any other PR program. And the hours of work experience that you have to show is 1,560. The second program under the express entry is the Federal Skilled Trades Program. This is a program that is meant to fill labor shortages. So it would be for specific NOC codes targeting specific job categories. So it could be anywhere from construction, chefs. There is also language requirement for this. And it also requires an employment offer and work experience. The third category under express entry is the Federal Skilled Worker. This is targeting those who have an offer for a permanent job with a Canadian employer. And it has a labor market impact assessment and language requirements. So just to recap for express entry, there is only the Canadian Experience class that does not require a job offer from an employer. Now, if you don't qualify under express entry, there are other pathways, specifically provincial nominations. Now, there are many provincial nominations programs, over 50 to be exact. So, not to be exact, there are more than 50. but instead of going through every single one of them, giving you an idea of the provinces that do provincial nominations, I would encourage you to visit the provinces' websites directly to find out what provincial nomination programs each province has available. There are specific requirements for each provincial nomination program, and generally, provincial nomination programs are easier than express entry cutoffs. Not always do you have to show a connection to the province that you want to apply for a provincial nomination. And provincial nomination can be done through express entry or without express entry. If done through express entry, again, you have to meet the 67-point criteria as we discussed earlier. If you do and you receive a nomination, you do get additional points added. And if you're not able to meet the express entry cutoff, so if you don't meet the 67 points, there is also the non-express entry provincial nomination pathways, where you can approach the province directly and see what provinces, like I said, visit the province's website directly to see what provincial nomination programs they have available. So another pathway is family class. So bringing in family into Canada is one of the highlights of our immigration system. Canada is big on reuniting families. So we're able to sponsor your spouse, conjugal partner, common law partner, dependent, adopted children, parents, grandparents, all through the family class. There are requirements that have to be met by the sponsor. For example, you have to meet all your PR residency requirements if you are a PR. You cannot have a criminal record. You have to meet financial requirements. If all these requirements are met, you are able to apply and sponsor those under your family class. I would also like to draw your attention to something called the LICO table, LICO, that would give you a good idea of the income requirements that you would need to show if you want to sponsor somebody in the family class. So I have a tab opened up here to give you an example. So the total number of people that you will be responsible for is how the financial requirements are calculated for family class. And for 2 people in 2020, it is 32,270. For 3 people, it becomes 39,672, and so on and so forth. There is a PR pathway for refugees as well, through private sponsorship. There's a program, there's a group of 5 individuals who can join together to sponsor refugees. There are economic mobility pathway projects where refugees can become permanent residents through the PR pathways that we had discussed. And also family reunification through the family class. Other PR pathways, the startup visa. So this pathway is for qualified immigrant entrepreneurs who are sponsored by Canadian investor. These immigrant entrepreneurs develop a business plan and they have a qualifying startup business. They partner with a private sector investor who is a designated entity. There's language requirements for this and financial requirements for this as well. PR pathway, self-employed, is another PR pathway. I would say this is the most unique of the lot. This is specifically targeting people who are well-renowned in cultural activities or athletes on a world-class level. Again, like all PR programs, there's language requirements. And for this one in particular, the ability to be self-employed in Canada. So we've gone through the different PR pathways where you can go through express entry, you can come through provincial nomination, you can come through family sponsorship. But how does COVID-19 affect us now? I think we're on track. Currently, we're on a target to reach new permanent residents in 2022, more than 400,000 new permanent residents. Immigration, I believe, will remain critical to our economic recovery by addressing labor shortages in our workforce. The Federal Skills Trades Program targets this. I would say look out for pilot programs and accelerated pathways, because these would be targeted to retain talented international workers. If you are already in Canada, working, studying, don't let that experience go to waste. Use it. Get your permanent residency. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to open the floor up to any questions. I understand the information was a lot to take in, possibly if this was your first time hearing about it. So any questions, here to answer.
Thank you very much, Donnaa, for that. That was a lot of useful information. And please, anyone, if you have any question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question ahead. So, and if I may start with asking, I do have a question. So is there any changes to the Canadian immigration policy, taking into consideration the current development of COVID status? Is the COVID has any kind of impact on the, let's say, delaying or postpone the processing of the immigration files from your experience?
Yeah, so there are delays that COVID is, because of COVID, we are experiencing delays. One program that has been really popular, however, because of COVID, is the CEC program, the Canadian Experience Class program, specifically because what Canada is trying to do is all the people that are already here in Canada, they're trying to give them the opportunity to apply for permanent residency. We're not able to bring in many new people out into our borders. So what Canada is trying to do is, as you might have seen over the past year, make the draw, surprise them with draws that are really easy, or lower the requirements, essentially trying to help anyone who's already here in Canada get their permanent residency. I do think we're going to see more changes coming up in the following year. For example, there's no longer going to be experience counted in terms of number of years. The express entry program is going to be changing a little bit. There's lots of changes coming up, but I don't think it's going to negatively impact immigration at all. If anything, like I mentioned, economics, it depends, Canada's economy depends on immigration. So we're going to see more immigrants come in. There will be a few delays, but nothing too extraordinary.
Thank you, Donnaa. Did you notice any kind of changing in the Canadian immigration policy between, let's say, the past 5 years and now? Because I do remember that I applied for my Canadian permanent residency under the federal skilled worker. There was something called simplified application process. So, and I'm not sure if this is still up or no. And now there's something else called the express entry, which you've already explained. So it seems that the Canadian politics have its impact on the Canadian laws and regulations regarding the immigration.
Yes, definitely. I do believe that they are trying to make it the process more transparent, give people the information that they need to make a complete application, where they know if they meet the requirements beforehand to apply. A lot of information now is available for everyone to access online. It's fairly easy to, I believe, Mr. Karhi, when about 5 years ago, it was easy to get sidetracked with what the requirements were for a specific immigration program. Now, I don't think that there's any gray area. If you go to canada.ca, every program that you need to know for immigration, you could type it in, you get the requirements that you need. There is no gray area in terms of application, so I think that makes it very easy for applicants. A lot of things are also electronic now. So paper application is still available, but making it electronic, for a lot of people, I think that makes it a lot easier as well.
Okay, so we do have a question here from the chat. Is there any changes for refugees who are crossing through the USA borders?
Well, I'm not sure if I understood that question.
Well, if based on my understanding, is there any changes towards the status of people who are crossing the United States-Canadian borders and claiming asking for asylum or asking for filing for refugee status? Is there anything in laws, regulations that could be related to their issue, based on your knowledge, of course?
No, not that I'm aware of. I believe that everything's the same in terms of how they assess the criteria for humanitarian asylum needs. That is done by an immigration officer at the border. So I could check, I could look it up and tell you if there's any changes to that, but not as far as I'm aware, no.
Yeah, we do have a question here from Mr. Omar. So Omar, please feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask, please. Donnaa, by the way, you're still sharing your screen.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Jason, for that. I'd like to thank you, Donnaa, for this presentation. I'm now a PhD student from my first year, and I'd like to ask you about what is the shortest path for obtaining the PR regarding express entry, as I know for other like PhD stream in PMP. So in your opinion, what is the shortest path to do that?
I would say express entry. Express entry is the fastest and most direct way to get permanent residency. It happens in about 6 months, ideally. There could be delays because of COVID currently, but yes, express entry is the fastest way for PR.
And also maybe it takes some time, and then after obtaining a PhD, maybe I could apply for nomination as it increased my points, as you know.
Sorry, one more time. I didn't catch that last part.
I'm asking about when I obtain a PhD program for minimum of 2 years, as I think, I could apply for the same express entry as it makes some additional points to my profile on the express entry as it links together.
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Jimmy, do you have anything? You've just posted in the chat COVID-19. Is there anything you would like to share with us or ask about?
No, thank you. It was related to the question about the changes for refugees crossing through USA borders. It's only the restrictions because of COVID-19. People, it's not easy to come from the United States yet.
So Donnaa, I do have a question actually. So many people do have that idea. Okay, well, if everything is available online and there is an instruction that I could follow. So why would I need an immigration consultant? Why, or a consultant? Why would I need a lawyer for example, to file my application? Well, it's a simple application, so why would I need? So could you explain to us what is the important role of the immigration consultant, which makes it very, very worth to hire an immigration consultant and use his or her services before applying or considering to apply for any file? Could you just let us know about this issue, please?
Yeah, definitely. I like that question because I like to start off by saying I really am a do-it-yourselfer. But when it comes to certain things, I like to just do it once and do it well. Immigration, I believe, is one of those things. There is a lot of information available online. Almost everything you need is available online. However, that is also part of the program because, that is part of the problem because you can sometimes get inundated with the information that is available online. Also, when it comes to immigration, there is a lot of ins and outs. As I explained, express entry is one big chunk. If you qualify under express entry, yes, that's great. It makes things very easy. However, most people don't right off the bat qualify for express entry. You might have to come under one of the provincial nomination programs. As I mentioned, there are over 50 provincial nomination programs. Getting the criteria for each one of those programs, where to contact, who to contact, where to send the application to. This is what immigration lawyers and immigration consultants are well versed in. What might take you maybe 3 to 4 days to find the information which is available online, we do have already available. One more thing when it comes to immigration, as a few of you might be aware, time is really of the essence. You need to be quick in making your applications. A lot of these immigration programs are on a lottery basis. If you're not fast enough, if you don't know which forms to send in, how quickly, what information to attach, there are chances that your application could get returned, delayed unnecessarily. And when you're on a temporary residence visa, sometimes you can't take that risk. You don't necessarily have the funds to learn and do it yourself. There are people who are ambitious enough to do it. If that's you, I applaud you. But most people do like to get the assistance of somebody, or at least know that they're on the right path. I'm more than happy to do that.
Well, for me, I will take it from another point. Well, if you can fix your car, why you go to the mechanic to fix it? So if you can, so everyone has his own specialty in something, and that's why we do hire people. So, okay, Donnaa, can you tell us about what is your limitation as immigration consultant? So for example, if I came to you to asking you, for example, to represent me before the Canadian Immigration Authority, what kind of limits you have, what kind of obligation you have towards me? Could you just elaborate this a little bit for us, please?
Sure, definitely. So an immigration consultant is able to do any sort of immigration related paperwork for you. Just recently, actually, immigration consultants were required, we are required to add an additional certification to represent you in any of the tribunals. I myself work with immigration lawyers, Vikas Sharma and Marissa Welshman. And so if you do come to us, we are able to represent you up to whatever level. Because if I'm not able to, once the case is out of my hands, I will pass it on to the lawyers. But to answer your question, once it goes to any sort of court level, a lawyer would have to take over it. In terms of tribunals, if you have the certification for it, some immigration consultants are allowed to represent you.
And what kind of qualifications you need to obtain in order to be an immigration consultant?
So that's the RCIC, the regulated Canadian Immigration Consultant. And it is the license that you can go look up. So you'd want anyone who tells you they're an immigration consultant, you can go to the RCIC website and look them up to ensure that they actually are who they say they are. I would encourage you to do this for any immigration consultant. The same thing with lawyers. You can go to the bar and look up the lawyer to ensure they are licensed. Yeah.
Okay, talking about this, we've read a lot and hear a lot about some kind of spam going on. So many people claiming that they are an immigration consultant, they are lawyers. Some people, some institutions or entities, give promises to the people, make them building hopes. Could you just give us some tips that when I read this, that would raise a red flag for me? So can you give us some tips that, okay, no, this is not to be true? For example, I know that no one can guarantee you any kind of visa or permanent residency application to be approved. There's no guarantee at all. It's not easy to bring, to have, for example, an official Canadian employee contract. So could you just give us some tips?
Definitely. So what I would start with is if the promise is too good to be true, it probably is. Anyone offering you work right off the bat and come to Canada, I'll get you a job. You can't come to Canada and get a job. You either have to be brought to Canada as an intra-company transfer, which we talked about earlier. You either have to have a labor market impact assessment done and have a Canadian employer offering you a job. You either have to have a postgraduate work permit that gives you the ability to work for a designated period of time. These are ways in which you can be a worker in Canada. So anyone offering you work, come to Canada and get a job, those are likely false pretenses. Another thing is coming to Canada and staying here and wanting to do cash jobs or people offering you cash jobs. I would recommend against that. You cannot show experience, work experience gained through cash jobs as work experience for PR. So when you're in Canada, use your time wisely. Use the time to get a job that you can actually show as employment in Canada for PR. When immigration consultants ask for money right off the bat, without, or like Mr. Karki said, give you promises saying you would definitely get a permanent PR residency or Canadian citizenship, I would be wary of that. As immigration consultants, we do not decide if you get your Canadian citizenship or permanent residency. It is an immigration officer that looks at your application and ultimately makes the decision. All we do as immigration consultants is prepare your application and give you the best possible chance for it to get approved. But the actual approval is done by immigration officers, like I said. So anyone promising too much, be wary. Like I said, information is available online, so double check information that is given to you if you can. Always go and check for yourself if the people who you are speaking to and represented by are registered, are licensed. Protect yourself in Canada, and that's what I would say.
Thank you very much, because as you know, there is a lot of people who are trading in people's hope. So we have here a comment from Kareem. So Kareem, please go ahead. Kareem. We can't hear you, Kareem. Kareem, we can't hear you. Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. So first of all, thank you, Donna, for the talk. It was like lots of good information, and I just have one quick comment after my colleague Omar. So he mentioned that he is a first-year PhD student, and I'm still in my PhD journey right now, and I have recently got my permanent residency maybe 3 weeks ago. So I'm pretty fresh, pretty fresh. So he just mentioned something about like the express entry and the provincial nominee program. So I have been like a candidate for both of them. He mentioned that once he applied for the express entry, he will then apply for the provincial nominee program. So there's like a lot of misconception about this thing. Provincial nominee program or PNPs, you do not apply for them. You just apply for the and correct me if I'm wrong. You just apply for the express entry, and then they will scan the pool, and they will look for candidates, and they will invite you for the PNP program to apply for. So just by default, you cannot apply for them. They have to invite you first so that you can apply under that program. Because like I have been into this as well, into the PNP program in Ontario, and I have been invited as well. So this is just like before I get the invitation, there was like a lot of misconception. Lots of people are just encouraging me, hey, why don't you apply for the PNP? Why don't you apply for the ONP? It's like lots of wrong information out there. Yeah, just I wanted to pass my comment to Omar, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Kareem. Yes,
Thanks,
I'd like to
Kareem.
touch on that as well. So there's two ways that you can do the provincial nomination, right? So if you're in the express entry pool already, then yes, you can get an ITA from the province, the invitation to apply from the province, and that adds points to your express entry score as a whole. But you are also able to request or apply for an ITA directly outside of express entry. So without the express entry pool, you're also able to do provincial nomination outside of the pool. So there's two ways you can go about doing that.
So yeah, there's always different ways to conduct things. So and that's why your role become very important, because you know the right way that the person should use. Yeah, instead of just keep trying and getting the unwanted outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right? So
Yeah.
okay, well, then last but not least, I would like to ask you, what brings you to this field, Donnaa? If I may ask you, so
Sure.
what encouraged you to become an immigration consultant?
Definitely. So I think I touched upon this a little bit earlier. My parents are immigrants of Canada. Seeing them go through the immigrant struggle has warmed my heart towards immigrants. It has made me want to work harder for immigrants and also be a voice for immigrants. In my spare time, I do work such as not just RRAI, but a few other things that make me proud to be a community member. Being in Canada has given me opportunities that I wouldn't necessarily have if I was anywhere else. So I'm grateful for that, and I'd like to be able to give back.
Well, and the RRAI is so grateful for your
Thank
time
you.
and experience. And we are very proud to have members in this community such as yourself. Okay, is there any other comment, question, anything you would like to ask Donnaa about? We have a valuable source of information here, so yeah, there
I
is
see a question.
from Jamie. Yes, Jimmy, please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Donnaa, for coming to share with us. What is your thoughts about the transition from the previous regulatory body to the new one, to the new college? How do you see that? How is that process going? Because the new one is just from November 23rd, and now to become a immigration consultant is so tough because it's only in Quebec universities or college. What is your experience on that, or your thoughts on that?
Hi, Jamie. Thank you for that question. Yes. So I've been part of this transition and been through a lot of meetings where this discussion has been ongoing on should it happen, and now the transition has happened. I do think that it is an effort to legitimize the industry more. As you're aware, immigration policy is always developing to keep ahead with the times, and making us a college now just gives us that much more legitimacy, I think. I do think it's a step in the right direction. So I understand it makes it a little harder for some people, and I empathize with that, but I do think that it was a necessary move.
Thank you, Donnaa, for answering that. And Brian said, okay, I have, there is a question from Brian, Donnaa, in the chat. How do we get in contact with you? So yeah,
sure.
So please, if you would like to answer.
So I was just going to share my screen actually with my contact information. I understand that some of you might have questions. Give me 1 second. So that's my email, dfredrick@fwimmigration.com. So if you have any case-related questions, any questions that came about after this presentation has ended, please shoot me an email. I'll be more than happy to answer it.
Thank you very much, Donnaa, for that. And I would be also very grateful if you can fill out our feedback forms. This form helps us to improve our services and the quality of topics that we are presented here at the RRAI. So is there any other question, comment? Hearing none, here I will hereby, on behalf of all of you, express my grateful and thanks to Donnaa Fredrick for her valuable time and information today. On behalf of all of us, on behalf of RRAI Board of Directors and volunteers, I am so grateful to you. Thank you very much. And we are hope to see you again in another sessions. For you, my friends, thank you very much for being here today. And we are looking forward to see you in another sessions with RRAI. Have a wonderful holiday season. Stay warm, stay safe, and be well, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donnaa.